My name is Sarah, and I am 34 years old working as a nurse practitioner in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I spend my days caring for patients, ensuring they are comfortable and safe. But when I go home, I step into a life that has felt frozen in time for 7 years. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever sacrificed everything for family only to realize you were being used. My husband died 7 years ago. Every month I sent his mom $600 to pay off a debt. One day the neighbor told me, "Stop sending money, check the camera." It was the 1st of February, and the Philadelphia winter was brutal this year. I sat at my small kitchen table wearing 2 sweaters and a thick pair of wool socks because I refused to turn the thermostat above 60 degrees. I could see my breath misting in the air in front of me as I uncapped my pen. My fingers were stiff from the cold, making my handwriting a little shaky as I filled out the check. Pay to the order of Linda Brooks, $600. This was a ritual I had performed 84 times, every single month since the day we buried my husband Liam. I looked at the signature line, and for a second, I did not see my own name. I saw Liam's smile. He was the love of my life, the only person who ever made me feel truly safe. When he died of cancer at 27, my world ended. And in the wreckage of my grief, his mother Linda had pulled me aside. I remember her tears. I remember how she clutched my hands at the funeral home. She told me she had taken out a second mortgage on her house to pay for Liam's experimental treatments. She said she was $50,000 in debt because she tried to save him. In that moment of blinding grief, I made a vow. I promised her I would pay it back. I promised that I would take care of the debt because Liam would have wanted me to. So for 7 years, I lived in a studio apartment. I drove a car that was falling apart, and I ate instant noodles so I could send them this check. I tore the check out of the book, and the sound seemed to echo in the empty, silent room. I had no idea that this piece of paper would be the last one I ever signed. I grabbed my coat and walked out to my car. It is a 2010 Toyota Corolla with a dent in the rear bumper and an engine that makes a rattling noise every time I accelerate. I prayed it would start. The engine coughed and sputtered before finally turning over. The heater in the car was broken, so the drive to my in-laws' house was just as freezing as my apartment. My hands gripped the freezing steering wheel as I navigated the icy roads toward the wealthy side of town. My in-laws live in a sprawling colonial-style house with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. As I pulled into their long driveway, I felt that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I always felt small here. I always felt like the poor widow who wasn't quite good enough for their son. I parked behind a brand-new Range Rover that still had the temporary dealer tags on it. I frowned. That must belong to Jessica, my sister-in-law, or maybe her husband, Marcus. I grabbed the envelope with the check and walked to the front door. I rang the bell and waited. I could hear laughter inside. It sounded warm and happy, a stark contrast to the silence of my life. The door swung open, and my mother-in-law Linda stood there. She was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her hair was perfectly blow-dried, and she smelled of expensive perfume. She didn't smile when she saw me. She just held out her hand. "You are late," she said. Her voice was sharp. "Today is the 3rd, Sarah. The bank charges late fees, you know. Interest does not wait for anyone, not even you." I mumbled an apology. "I am sorry, Linda. The shift schedule at the hospital was crazy, and I had to pick up extra hours to make sure the check cleared." She snatched the envelope from my hand and opened it immediately, checking the amount. She didn't say thank you. She never said thank you. She just nodded as if I had finally performed a basic trick correctly. "Come in for a second," she said, but it wasn't an invitation. It was an order. "I need you to sign the receipt book so Gary stops nagging me about keeping records." I stepped into the foyer, and the warmth of the house hit me like a physical blow. It was toasty and smelled of roasting meat and cinnamon. I followed her into the kitchen. There in the center of the room stood Jessica, my sister-in-law, and her husband, Marcus. They were popping a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. The cork flew across the room and they both cheered. Jessica was glowing. She was wearing a new dress, and on the counter sat a bright orange Hermes shopping bag. I knew enough about fashion to know that bag cost thousands of dollars. Marcus was leaning against the marble island wearing a gold Rolex that caught the light. He was a tall man who always talked loudly about cryptocurrency and market disruptions, but never seemed to actually have a job. "Oh, look who it is," Marcus said, grinning. "It is Saint Sarah. Here to pay the toll?" Jessica giggled, sipping her champagne. "Don't be mean, Marcus. Sarah is just doing her duty." I stood there feeling my old coat dripping melting snow onto their hardwood floor. I felt dirty and poor. I looked at the champagne and the orange bag, and then I looked at Linda. "Is there a special occasion?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Marcus raised his glass. "Just celebrating a little win. Smart investing, Sarah. When you know how to make money work for you, it literally multiplies. You should let me manage your portfolio sometime." "Oh wait, that is right, you don't have one." The room went silent for a second before they all burst out laughing. My face burned. Linda chuckled, shaking her head as she put my check into a drawer that was already stuffed with papers. "Don't tease her, Marcus. Not everyone has your business acumen. Sarah is more of a worker bee. Besides, poor Liam left her with such a mess. It is a shame, really. Some men build empires for their families, and some men leave debts that their mothers have to clean up." The insult felt like a slap in the face. She was talking about her own dead son. My Liam, the man who worked 2 jobs while he was in school. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to swallow the anger. I did it for Liam. I always did it for Liam. "I just need to sign the book, Linda," I said quietly. She pushed a leather-bound notebook toward me. "Sign at the bottom, and try to be on time next month, Sarah. We are planning a trip to Italy in the spring, and I don't want to be worrying about cash flow because you are disorganized." I signed my name quickly, my hand trembling not from the cold this time, but from a mix of rage and humiliation. I turned to leave without saying goodbye. As I walked to the door, I heard Marcus say loud enough for me to hear, "Man, it must suck to be that broke. I guess that is what happens when you don't have vision." I walked out into the biting cold air, and the heavy wooden door clicked shut behind me, locking away the warmth and the laughter. I got back into my rattling Toyota and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I didn't have the energy. I just put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. As I was driving down the street, leaving their cul-de-sac, I saw a woman walking a golden retriever. It was Mrs. Gable, the neighbor, who had lived next to Linda and Gary for 30 years. She waved at me frantically, stepping into the road to flag me down. I slowed down and rolled down the window. The electric motor groaned as the glass slid down. "Hi, Mrs. Gable," I said, trying to force a smile. "It is freezing out here." She leaned in close, looking around as if she was afraid of being watched. Her eyes were wide with concern. "Sarah, honey, I saw you walking out of there. You looked upset. Are you okay?" "I am fine," I said automatically. "Just dropping off the check for the loan. You know how it is." Mrs. Gable frowned. "The loan? What loan?" "The mortgage," I explained. "The one Linda took out for Liam's treatment. I pay it back every month." Mrs. Gable's face went pale. She let go of the dog's leash and reached through the window to grab my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Sarah, listen to me. Listen to me very carefully. You need to stop sending them money." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confused. "They paid off that house 5 years ago," Mrs. Gable whispered, her voice shaking. "Linda bragged about it at the block party. She drank too much wine and told everyone they were completely debt-free. And last week, Gary told my husband they are looking at buying a boat, a 50-footer, Sarah. They are not in debt. They are fleecing you." I stared at her, unable to process the words. "That is impossible," I stammered. Linda showed me the bank papers. "She cries every time we talk about it." "Check the camera," Mrs. Gable said urgently. "What camera?" "The ring." "Doorbell," she hissed. "They never changed the master account. Liam set it up for them right before he got sick. Remember, he used his email. If you still have his passwords, check the cloud storage. I saw them, Sarah. After you left last month, I saw them on my porch laughing about you. Please just check." A car turned the corner and Mrs. Gable jumped back, grabbing her dog's leash. "I have said too much. Just check Sarah. Don't let them do this to you anymore." She hurried away, walking briskly down the sidewalk, leaving me idling in the middle of the street, with my heart pounding in my throat like a sledgehammer. I drove home in a daze. I don't remember the traffic. I don't remember running red lights. My mind was spinning. Paid off a boat. It couldn't be true. Linda was Liam's mother. She loved him. She wouldn't use his death to steal from me. She wouldn't look me in the eye and cry about money if she didn't need it. When I got back to my freezing apartment, I didn't even take off my coat. I threw my bag on the floor and scrambled for my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I opened the browser and went to the Ring website. I prayed the password hadn't changed. Liam always used the same password for everything. The name of our first dog followed by the year we met. I typed it in. Buster 2012. Enter. The screen loaded. My heart stopped. It worked. I was in. I scrolled through the event history. There were hundreds of videos. Motion detected, front door, driveway. I scrolled back to about an hour ago. The timestamp showed 4:15 p.m. That was right after I left. I clicked play. The video showed the front porch. The audio was crisp and clear. The door opened, and Linda stepped out holding the envelope I had just given her. She waved it in the air like a trophy. Marcus stepped out behind her holding his champagne glass. "Is she gone?" Marcus asked, looking down the driveway. "She is gone," Linda said, and then she laughed. A deep, throaty cackle that made my skin crawl. God, she is pathetic. She drives that piece of junk car and wears those Goodwill clothes and hands me $600 like it is gold. Marcus took a sip of champagne. "Hey, money is money, Mom. That $600 covers the car payment on the Rover for the week." Linda ripped open the envelope and pulled out my check. She kissed it, smacking her lips on the paper. "The cash cow delivers again," she sneered. I almost burst out laughing when she apologized for being late. "She is eating instant noodles while we are dining on omakase tonight." "Hey, does this cover the tip for the sushi chef?" Marcus laughed, high-fiving her. "It covers the tip and the first round of sake." "You are a genius, Linda." Telling her about the mortgage was the best lie you ever told. "I do what I have to do for this family," Linda said, tucking the check into her pocket. "Liam was useless when he was alive, but at least his death pays the bills. Let's go inside. It is chilly." The video ended. I sat there in the silence of my apartment. The screen went black, but I could still hear her voice in my head. Liam was useless. The cash cow. The best lie I ever told. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but the tears didn't come. Instead, a wave of nausea rolled over me. I ran to the bathroom and retched into the toilet until there was nothing left. I gasped for air, clutching the porcelain. It wasn't just anger, it was horror. For 7 years I had starved myself. I had denied myself heating. I had skipped doctor appointments. I had worked double shifts until my feet bled. All for a lie. All to fund their champagne and luxury cars. I washed my face with freezing cold water and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked hollow. I looked 10 years older than I was. "No more," I whispered to my reflection. I went back to the living room. I needed to know everything. If the mortgage was a lie, what else was a lie? I went to the closet and pulled down the old box of Liam's paperwork. I hadn't opened it in years because it hurt too much. Dust motes danced in the air as I ripped the lid off. I dug through his medical files. I found the bills. I found the insurance statements. And then I found something I had never seen before. It was a printed email crumpled up at the bottom of the box. It looked like it had been printed by mistake, or maybe Liam had printed it right before he went into the coma and never got the chance to show me. It was from a life insurance company. Subject beneficiary confirmation. I smoothed out the wrinkled paper. My eyes scanned the text. Dear Mr. Brooks, this email is to confirm that your policy ending in 778 has been updated. The primary beneficiary remains listed as Linda Brooks and Gary Brooks per the joint account agreement established in 2015. I frowned. Joint account Liam and I had separate accounts, but he had a joint account with his parents from before we were married. I read the next line, and the room spun. Policy value $500,000. I dropped the paper. $500,000. My brain was firing on all cylinders now. I grabbed my laptop again and logged into Liam's old email account. I searched for the insurance company name. Nothing in the inbox. I checked the trash. Empty. I checked the spam folder. There it was. An automated notification from 7 years ago. Funds dispersed. Amount $500, $1,000, dollars. Destination joint account ending in 9902. I did the math. The date of the disbursement was 3 days after Liam died. Linda had told me there was no insurance. She told me Liam had let the policy lapse because we were broke. She told me they had to mortgage their house to pay the $50,000 in medical bills. But if they received $500,000, that meant they had $500,000 in cash the week we buried him. They didn't borrow money to save him. They stole his death benefit, and then they looked me in the face, the grieving widow, and told me I owed them money. I looked at the checkbook sitting on the table. The carbon copy of the check I wrote today stared back at me. They had taken over $500,000 from his policy, and then they had milked me for another $50,000 over 7 years. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was colder than the apartment. It was the cold of a dead body. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Linda. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I navigated to my bank app. I looked at my savings account. 0. I looked at my checking account. $200 left for the rest of the month. Then I opened the browser and searched for Forensic Accountant Philadelphia. Linda wanted to talk about business acumen. She wanted to talk about smart investing. She had no idea who she had just messed with. She thought I was a weak, grieving widow. She forgot that I am a nurse. I deal with blood and trauma and death every single day. I know how to stop a bleed, and I know how to cut out a tumor. And Linda Brooks was a tumor that I was about to surgically remove. I stared at the computer screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. The video of them laughing played in my mind on a loop. Liam was useless. "Oh, Liam," I whispered, looking at his photo on the mantel. "I am going to burn their world to the ground for you." I did not sleep that night. I sat in my living room wrapped in a blanket, watching the sun rise over the frozen city. My eyes were dry and burning. The grief I had carried for 7 years felt different now. It was no longer a heavy weight pushing me down. It was a fire burning me from the inside out. I called the hospital at 6 in the morning and told them I was taking a personal day. I had never called in sick, not once. But today I had a different kind of work to do. I showered and dressed in my most professional suit. It was a black blazer and trousers I usually save for medical conferences. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I needed to look like someone who could not be messed with. I grabbed the heavy leather binder from the closet. Inside was Liam's death certificate and the legal documents naming me the executor of his estate. Linda had always told me there was no need to go to the bank. She said she had handled everything because she knew the manager. She said she wanted to spare me the pain. Now I knew she just wanted to spare herself the exposure. I drove to the downtown branch of the bank where Liam had banked since he was a teenager. The lobby was quiet. The air smelled of stale coffee and money. I sat across from a branch manager named Mr. Henderson. He looked at the death certificate and then at me with a sympathetic smile that felt practiced. "I am sorry for your loss." "Mrs. Brooks," he said, typing into his computer, "even after 7 years, these things are hard. How can I help you today?" I folded my hands on the desk. "I need to see the full transaction history for every account connected to my husband's Social Security number, specifically any accounts that were active at the time of his death." Mr. Henderson nodded and clicked his mouse. He frowned. "I see his personal checking account, which was closed. But there is another account here, a joint savings account." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Joint with whom?" "With a Linda Brooks," he said. "It looks like it was opened when he was 18. It is a joint survivorship account." I felt the blood drain from my face. A joint account. That was the loophole. Because her name was on it, she had legal access to the money the second he died. She didn't need to wait for probate. She didn't need my permission. "Can you print the statement for the month of February 7 years ago?" I asked. My voice was dangerously calm. The printer whirred. Mr. Henderson slid a piece of paper across the desk. I looked at the dates. Liam died on February 15th. The account balance on February 14th was $500. On February 16th, the day after he died, there was a deposit. Electronic transfer. Life insurance payout. $500,000. There it was. The money I thought never existed. And then I looked at February 18th, 3 days after he died, the day before his funeral. While I was sitting in my apartment, unable to eat or speak because I was so broken, Linda was standing in this bank. Withdrawal. Cashier's check. $500,000. Closing balance 0. She had drained it. She emptied every single cent before we even put him in the ground. I stared at the paper. The numbers blurred. Mr. Henderson, I asked, pointing at the withdrawal. Who signed for this? Since it is a joint account, Mrs. Brooks, either party can withdraw funds, the manager explained. Linda Brooks signed for the cashier's check. I thanked him and walked out of the bank. The cold air hit me, but I didn't feel it. I sat in my car and stared at the statement. $500,000. But there was one more piece to the puzzle. The debt. Linda had sworn to me that the experimental treatment cost $50,000 and that insurance had denied it. She said she took a second mortgage to pay the hospital directly. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking not from cold, but from rage. I dialed the billing department of the university hospital where Liam had been treated. I knew the system. I was a nurse. I knew what questions to ask. I gave them my information. I gave them Liam's information. I need a full audit of the patient responsibility for the dates of service, I said. I need to know if there is any outstanding balance or if any third-party payments were made. The woman on the line put me on hold. The elevator music played for 5 minutes. It felt like 5 years. Mrs. Brooks, are you there? The woman asked. I am here. I have reviewed the entire file. The total billed amount was $200,000. However, your husband's insurance through his employer covered 100% of the experimental protocol under a compassionate care clause. The patient responsibility was 0. I gripped the phone so hard I thought the screen would crack. Are you sure? I whispered. There was no copay, no $50,000 deductible. No, ma'am, the woman said firmly. The account balance is 0. It has been 0 since the day of discharge. No outside payments were made because none were owed. I hung up the phone. A scream built up in my throat, but I swallowed it down. It tasted like bile. There was no debt. There never was a debt. Linda had taken the $500,000 from the insurance, and then she had invented a $50,000 debt to extract even more from me. She had looked at me at the funeral while I was crying over her son's casket, and she had calculated exactly how much she could squeeze out of my grief. And suddenly the pieces clicked together. 7 years ago, right after the funeral, Marcus had pulled up in a brand new Range Rover. He told everyone he had a lucky break with Bitcoin. Jessica had renovated her kitchen that same spring. Marble countertops, Viking appliances. She said she got a bonus at work. Linda and Gary had gone on a month-long cruise to the Mediterranean that summer. They said it was to heal from the loss. They didn't win the lottery. They didn't have good luck. They bought that car with Liam's death money. They renovated that kitchen with the money meant to protect his widow. They went on that cruise with the cash that should have paid for my rent. And while they were spending his money, I was sending them $600 a month. I was eating instant noodles. I was shivering in the cold. They were not just thieves. They were monsters. I looked at the bank statement in my hand again. February 18th. That was the day Linda told me, "We are family, Sarah. We have to help each other." She was right. We were family, and I was going to teach her exactly what happens when you betray your family. I started the car. I wasn't going to go home. I had one more stop to make. I needed to see exactly where my money had gone. I drove toward the dealership where Marcus bought his cars. I had the VIN number of his Range Rover from a photo he posted on Instagram bragging about his success. It was time to find out who really paid for that car, because now I knew the truth. They didn't just steal from me. They stole my life. They stole my grief, and they were going to pay for it with interest. I sat in my car outside the dealership for a long time, watching Marcus drive away in the Range Rover that my husband's death benefit had paid for. The engine of my old Toyota finally sputtered and died, leaving me in silence. I knew I had to go back to work. I knew I had to pretend everything was normal. But the universe has a funny way of testing your resolve because 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Linda. I stared at the screen. My hands were trembling not from fear, but from the sheer effort it took not to throw the phone across the room. I took a deep breath. I channeled every ounce of patience I had left. I answered. "Hi, Linda," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Sarah." "Thank God you picked up." Linda's voice was breathless and high-pitched, a tone she reserved for when she wanted something. "Listen, honey, we have a bit of an emergency here with Gary." My stomach churned. "What is wrong?" I asked. "Is he sick?" "Well, you know how his back has been giving him trouble since the 90s. Linda sighed. "The doctor says he needs serious relief. There is this therapeutic massage chair. It is medical grade, Sarah. It aligns the spine and uses heat technology. The insurance won't cover it, of course, because they are useless. But Gary is in so much pain. He can barely walk to the kitchen." I closed my eyes. I could picture Gary perfectly fine yesterday, walking around the yard inspecting the landscaping. "How much is it, Linda?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "It is $4,000, she said quickly. "I know it sounds like a lot, but it is on sale. It is usually $8,000. We really need to get it for him, Sarah. I was thinking since you are so good with saving, maybe you could treat this as an advance, on the monthly payments. You could just pay the $4,000 now, and then you wouldn't have to send a check for, let's see, about 6 months. It would be easier for everyone." An advance. She wanted me to pay $4,000 up front, for a chair, while I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame. The old Sarah would have panicked. The old Sarah would have scraped together her emergency fund or taken extra shifts to make it happen because she was terrified of disappointing them. But the old Sarah was dead. I looked at the recording device I had bought online, which was currently taping this call. I paused for a long moment, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Sarah, are you there?" Linda asked, her voice tightening with impatience. "I am here, Linda," I said slowly. "Listen, I understand. Back pain is terrible. I want to help Gary." I could hear the relief in her exhale. "Oh, thank you, Sarah. I knew we could count on you. Can you wire the money today?" "The sale ends at 5. "Wait," I said. "I don't have $4,000 in my checking account, Linda." Her silence was icy. "What do you mean? You have a job. You don't have savings. I have a retirement account." I lied smoothly. "A 401k through the hospital. I can withdraw the money from there. But there is a catch. Since I am under 59 years old, there is a massive penalty for early withdrawal unless I can prove it is for a hardship or a debt payment." I heard her hesitate. "A debt payment?" "Yes," I said. "If I can show the bank the original loan documents for the mortgage you took out for Liam. The paperwork that shows the $50,000 debt. If I submit that I can take the money out tax-free and wire it to you immediately." Linda went quiet. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. She knew the debt was fake. She knew there was no loan. But she wanted that $4,000. Greed is a powerful blinder. "Oh, Sarah, I don't know where those papers are," she stammered. "It has been 7 years. We might have shredded them when we refinanced." I made my voice sound desperate. "Please look for them, Linda. I really want to get Gary that chair. The bank is very strict. They just need the original loan agreement with the bank seal and the dates. If you can scan that and email it to me, I can have the money to you by tomorrow morning." There was a long pause. I held my breath. Would she take the bait? "Okay," she said finally. "I think I might have a copy in the basement safe. Let me look. I will email you tonight." I hung up the phone and smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. I had her. If she sent me a fake document, she wasn't just lying anymore. She was committing mail fraud and forgery. She was handing me the nails for her own coffin. I waited all night. I refreshed my email every 10 minutes. At 11:45 p.m., a notification popped up. Subject Loan Docs, from Linda Brooks. Attached was a PDF file. I opened it. My heart was pounding. It was a document from First National Bank. It looked official at first glance. It had a logo. It had a signature line with Linda's name and a date from 7 years ago. It listed a loan amount of $50,000. But then I zoomed in. I have been a nurse for 10 years. I have to look at details. I have to read fine print on medication labels. And what I saw on this screen made me want to laugh out loud. The logo of the bank was pixelated. It looked like it had been copied and pasted from a low-resolution image found on Google. The font for the date was different from the font in the body of the text. One was Times New Roman and the other was Arial. And the best part was the stamp. At the bottom, there was a stamp that said certified copy. But the date on the stamp was blurred out, and if you looked very closely at the edge of the stamp, you could see a faint gray line where someone had poorly cropped it using a computer program. She had forged it. She had probably sat at her computer with Marcus and cut and pasted this together in an hour. I didn't reply to her. Instead, I forwarded the email to James. James was an old friend from college who was now a contract lawyer. We hadn't spoken much lately because I had been too ashamed of my poverty to hang out with successful friends, but I knew he would help me. The next morning, I walked into James's office. I put my laptop on his desk. "Tell me what I'm looking at, James," I said. He adjusted his glasses and leaned in. He studied the screen for less than a minute. Then he sat back and let out a low whistle. "Sarah, where did you get this?" "My mother-in-law sent it to me," I said. "She claims it proves a debt I owe her." James laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. "Sarah, this is the worst forgery I have ever seen. Look at this. The bank branch number listed here, that branch closed in 2010. Liam died in 2017. This bank didn't even exist at that location when this document was supposedly signed. And the notary seal. That is a clip art image. I have seen that exact graphic on legal templates online." He looked at me serious now. "Why did she send this to you?" "To get me to release $4,000 from my retirement fund," I said. James slammed his hand on the desk. "That is fraud, Sarah. That is theft by deception. That is forgery of a financial instrument. If you take this to the police, she is looking at felony charges. This isn't a family dispute anymore. This is a crime." I nodded slowly. "I know, but I am not ready to go to the police yet. I need everything. I need to bury them so deep they can never crawl out." That night I needed a drink. I never went out. I couldn't afford it. But James had insisted on buying me around to celebrate my freedom from the lie. We went to a dive bar on the edge of town. It was dark, loud, and smelled of stale beer. Perfect. I didn't want to be seen. We were sitting in a booth in the back corner nursing our beers when the door opened. A gust of cold wind blew in, followed by a loud, boisterous voice I recognized instantly. I froze. It was Marcus. He stumbled in looking already half drunk. He was wearing a designer leather jacket that probably cost more than my car, but he wasn't with Jessica. Hanging on his arm was a woman I had never seen before. She was young, maybe 22, with bleached blonde hair and a skirt that was too short for the winter weather. I ducked my head, signaling James to stay quiet. We watched through the gloom. Marcus led the girl to the bar, which was only a few feet away from our booth. He slammed his hand on the counter. "Shots of tequila barkeep," he yelled. "Top shelf. Put it on the black card." The girl giggled, tracing a finger down his arm. "You are so bad, Marcus. What would your wife say if she knew we were spending this much money?" I held my breath. I leaned in closer, straining to hear over the thumping bass of the music. Marcus laughed. A cruel, arrogant sound. "Jessica, please. She doesn't have a clue. She thinks I am at a crypto conference in Miami. Besides, it is not her money anyway." The girl looked confused. "What do you mean I thought you guys were rich? That house is huge." Marcus downed a shot and slammed the glass on the wood. "It is all a show, babe. A big, beautiful show. The old lady, my mother-in-law, she pays for everything. She is obsessed with looking rich. She funds the cars, the trips, the house. I just have to play the part of the successful son-in-law, and I get a free ride." He leaned in close to the girl, whispering loudly. "And the best part, they are bleeding the other daughter dry to do it. The widow. Poor girl sends them checks every month thinking she is paying off some debt. She is eating dirt while we are drinking Patron." My blood ran cold. My hands clenched into fists under the table. James reached out and put a hand on my arm to steady me. Marcus continued oblivious to the fact that his victim was 10 feet away. "Honestly, I am doing them a favor," he slurred. "Jessica is boring. She is just like her mother, needy, vain. But as long as the checks keep clearing and the old lady keeps paying my credit card bills, I will play the loving husband. But tonight I am all yours." He kissed the girl sloppily and they stumbled toward the back exit, probably heading for the bathroom or his car. I sat there frozen. It wasn't just Linda. It wasn't just greed. It was a conspiracy. Marcus wasn't a wealthy investor. He was a leech, a gold digger. And Linda and Gary were so desperate to keep up the appearance of a perfect wealthy family with a successful daughter and a rich son-in-law that they were willing to steal from their dead son's widow to fund a stranger's lifestyle. They were sacrificing me to feed him. I looked at James. My eyes were dry. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "Did you get that?" I asked James. He nodded, holding up his phone. Voice memo running the whole time. The audio is a bit noisy, but you can hear him clearly admitting to the scheme. "Good," I said, standing up. I threw a $20 bill on the table. "Where are you going?" James asked. "To confront him?" "No," I said, buttoning my coat. "I am going to let him dig his grave a little deeper. He just gave me the final piece of the puzzle. They are all frauds, every single one of them, and I'm going to make sure that when I pull the rug out, everyone falls." I walked out into the cold night air. The stars were shining above me, sharp and clear. For the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel the cold. I felt the heat of the fire that was about to consume the Brooks family, and I was the one holding the match. I woke up the next morning with a clarity that felt almost dangerous. For 7 years, I had woken up with a heavy stone in my chest, a crushing weight of grief and obligation. I used to wake up calculating how many shifts I needed to work to afford the heating bill, or how many days I could stretch a loaf of bread. But today the stone was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve that felt like a surgical scalpel. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the empty space next to me where Liam used to sleep. I ran my hand over the cold sheets. They had taken everything from me. They had taken the money meant to keep me safe. They had taken my dignity. They had taken the last shred of peace I had. But they were not going to take one more day of my life. I walked into the kitchen and made coffee. It was the cheap, instant kind I had forced myself to drink for years to save money. I took one sip and poured the rest down the sink. I was done living like a pauper to fund their paradise. I opened my laptop and sat at the small, wobbly table. It was time to set the trap. I knew exactly what motivated the Brooks family. It was not love. It was not loyalty. It was not family honor. It was greed. Pure, unadulterated greed. And I was about to serve them a feast of it. I needed to get them all in one place. I needed them comfortable. I needed them arrogant. And most importantly, I needed them on the record. I picked up my phone and composed a text message to the group chat that included Linda, Gary, and Jessica. I stared at the blinking cursor for a moment. I had to sound like the Sarah they knew. The submissive, dutiful daughter-in-law who just wanted to please them. I had to sound like the victim they had groomed me to be. "Hi everyone," I typed. "I have some incredible news. I just received a major promotion at the hospital. It comes with a significant signing bonus. I know I have been paying off the debt for Liam's treatment month by month, but I want to be done with it. I want to move forward. I would like to invite you all to dinner this Friday night to celebrate. I want to write you a check for the remaining $30,000 to pay off the loan completely in one lump sum. Dinner is on me." I read the message twice. It was perfect. It was the bait they could not resist. $30,000. To them it meant another luxury vacation or a down payment on a new toy. To me, it was a fictional number attached to a fictional debt, but I needed them to believe it was real. I hit send. I set the phone down on the table and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Less than 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again and again. The 3 little dots appeared and disappeared rapidly as they all typed at once. Linda was the first to reply. "Oh, Sarah, that is wonderful news. We are so proud of you. Liam would be so relieved to know his debt is finally settled." Gary chimed in immediately after. Great job, kid. Hard work pays off. Where are we eating? Then Jessica. Congrats, Sarah. Finally moving up in the world, huh? We are free. Friday. I watched the messages roll in and I felt a wave of nausea. They were so predictable. Not a single question about the promotion, not a single question about how I was doing, just immediate acceptance of the money. They didn't care where the money came from. I could have told them I sold a kidney and they would have just asked what time to pick up the check. But I knew something they didn't know. I knew what they were saying when they thought I wasn't listening. I walked over to the bookshelf in the living room and pulled down an old iPad. It was Liam's iPad from years ago. It had a cracked screen and the battery barely held a charge, but it was still logged into his old Apple ID. The same Apple ID that was part of the Brooks family sharing plan. Linda had insisted on a family plan years ago to save money, and they had never removed Liam's account. They probably forgot this device even existed. I plugged it in and waited for it to boot up. The screen flickered to life. I tapped the blue message icon. Because of the cloud sync, I could see every iMessage sent between Apple devices in the family group. Not the group chat they included me in, the real group chat, the one named the Inner Circle. I watched as the messages from that chat populated the screen in real time. Linda. Did you see the text? The idiot is finally coughing up the cash. Jessica. OMG, Mom, that is perfect timing. Marcus was just freaking out about the Amex bill. Linda. $30,000. That clears the rest of the fake loan. I can't believe she actually fell for the lump sum idea. I thought we would have to milk her for another 5 years. Jessica. What about the condo in Florida? The one Marcus wanted Linda call the realtor. Tell him we have the deposit. With Sarah's 30 grand, plus what we have skimmed from the insurance account, we can put a down payment on the deluxe unit. The one with the ocean view. Marcus, hell yes. Drinks on me tonight. Make sure she takes us somewhere expensive. If she has bonus money, she can pay for steak. I read the messages over and over again. The fake loan. Milk her. The idiot. I took a screenshot of the conversation. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. I felt completely detached. It was like I was watching a documentary about a crime. Evidence A, evidence B, evidence C. They were already spending the money. They were planning to buy a condo in Florida with the money I had supposedly earned from a promotion. They were laughing at me, calling me an idiot. I looked at the time. It was only 10:00 a.m. on a Tuesday. The dinner was set for Friday. That gave me 3 days. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to let them stew in their excitement. 3 days to make sure the trap was inescapable. I picked up my phone and replied to the main group chat. Let's do the Capitol Grill downtown, 7 p.m. I will make the reservation. Can't wait to celebrate with you all. The Capitol Grill. It was the most expensive steakhouse in the city, a place where a single steak cost more than my weekly grocery budget, a place where business deals were made and power was flaunted. It was the perfect stage for what I had planned. Linda replied instantly with a heart emoji. Perfect choice, Sarah. We will be there. I put the phone down and walked to the window. I looked out at the gray winter sky. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lonely. I felt powerful. They thought they were the predators. They thought they were the wolves feasting on a sheep. But they had made a fatal mistake. They forgot that even a sheep will fight back if you back it into a corner. And I wasn't a sheep anymore. I was the shepherd, and I was leading them straight to the slaughterhouse. I spent the rest of the day organizing my files. I printed out the bank statements showing the insurance theft. I printed the email with the fake loan document. I printed the screenshot of their group chat calling me an idiot. I put everything into a crisp manila envelope. I didn't need a lawyer for this part. Not yet. This was personal. I imagined the look on Linda's face when the check didn't clear. I imagined Marcus's face when he realized his free ride was over. I imagined Jessica having to actually work for a living. The images were sweeter than any revenge fantasy I had ever had. I went to bed that night early. I needed my rest. I needed to look fresh and happy for the dinner. I needed to look like the successful promoted daughter-in-law they expected. I practiced my smile in the mirror. It didn't reach my eyes, but they wouldn't notice. They never looked at my eyes. They only ever looked at my wallet. As I drifted off to sleep, I whispered into the darkness. Enjoy the anticipation, Linda. Buy your dresses. Dream about your condo, because on Friday night, the bill comes due. And this time, I am not the one paying it. The Capitol Grill is the kind of place where the lighting is always dim and the air smells of aged mahogany and money. It is the kind of place where business deals are signed over $300 bottles of Cabernet and where people like my in-laws go to pretend they are royalty. I walked through the heavy glass doors and the warmth of the restaurant hit me instantly. It was a stark contrast to the biting Philadelphia winter wind I had just escaped. But for the first time in 7 years, the cold didn't bother me. The ice was inside me now. I spotted them immediately. They were seated in a large semicircular leather booth in the back corner, the prime spot for people who want to be seen, but also want privacy to conspire. They looked like a portrait of American excess. Marcus was wearing a suit that was too shiny, and his laugh boomed across the dining room, echoing off the dark wood paneling. Jessica was next to him, shimmering in a silver dress that looked brand new, probably bought with the credit card I was paying off. Linda and Gary sat opposite them, looking like the proud patriarch and matriarch of a dynasty built on lies. I took a deep breath and smoothed the front of my blazer. I had worn my best clothes not to impress them, but to armor myself. I walked toward the table, and as I approached the conversation, died instantly. It was that sudden hush that happens when the mark enters the room. They all turned to me, and their faces transformed into masks of welcoming delight. "Sarah, you are here," Linda cooed, waving me over. "We were just ordering wine. Come sit next to me." I slid into the booth next to my mother-in-law. The leather was soft and expensive. I looked at the table. They had already ordered the seafood tower. 3 tiers of lobster tails, jumbo shrimp, and oysters on ice sat in the center of the table like a monument to gluttony. "I hope you do not mind," Marcus said, grinning his teeth white and predatory. "We went ahead and got started. We are celebrating after all, right?" "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Order whatever you want. Tonight is a special occasion." Marcus signaled the waiter with a snap of his fingers that made me cringe. "We are ready to order the mains now," he announced loudly. "I will take the dry-aged tomahawk ribeye, medium rare, and add the truffle butter. I will have the lobster mac and cheese and the filet," Jessica chirped, closing her menu without even looking at the prices. Linda and Gary ordered similarly extravagant dishes: lamb chops, sea bass, sides of creamed spinach and roasted mushrooms. They ordered with the reckless abandon of people who know they are not footing the bill. When the waiter turned to me, I ordered a simple house salad and a glass of water. "You are not eating?" Linda asked, raising an eyebrow. "Come on, Sarah, live a little. You just got a promotion." "I ate a big lunch." I lied. "I am just happy to be here with family." "Family?" Gary grunted, nodding solemnly. "That is what it is all about, sticking together, helping each other out." The wine arrived and Marcus took charge, pouring glasses for everyone except me. He swirled his glass, sniffing it like a connoisseur, even though I knew his palate was accustomed to cheap beer. "So tell us about this bonus," Marcus said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Must be a hell of a job to pay out a chunk like that." "It is a senior administrative role," I said, keeping my story vague. "More responsibility, more oversight. And yes, a very generous sign-on bonus." "That is fantastic," Jessica said, but her eyes were already drifting back to her husband. "You know Marcus has some big news, too. His startup is really taking off. Here we go, the pitch." "Oh, really?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "What is the project now?" "It is a decentralized finance platform for luxury assets," Marcus said, puffing out his chest. "We are tokenizing high-end real estate. It is going to revolutionize the market. We just need a little more liquid capital to secure the initial properties, but once we launch, the returns are going to be astronomical. We are talking 10, maybe 20 times the investment." He looked at me pointedly. "Smart people are moving their cash into crypto, Sarah. You should think about diversifying. Once you pay off mom and dad, you will have some free cash flow. I could get you in on the ground floor, friends and family discount." I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. He was eating a steak I was paying for, talking about a scam he was running, and trying to recruit me into losing even more money. I will keep that in mind, Marcus, I said. But first, I need to take care of the past before I look at the future. The food arrived, and the conversation lulled as they attacked their plates. I watched them eat. There was something grotesque about it. The way grease shone on Marcus's chin. The way Jessica picked at her lobster with manicured fingers. They were devouring the resources of a dead man. My dead husband. I reached into my purse. My hand brushed against the cool metal of my phone. I unlocked it silently and opened the voice recorder app. I tapped the red button. The timer started counting up. 001, 002. I pulled the phone out, keeping it flat against my palm, and slid it onto the white tablecloth. I picked up my heavy linen napkin and draped it casually over the phone, concealing it completely. The microphone was pointing directly at Linda. I cleared my throat. The sound was small, but it cut through the noise of their chewing. Before we get to dessert, I said, I want to settle the business part of the evening. I brought the checkbook. The effect was instantaneous. Forks lowered. Chewing stopped. All 4 pairs of eyes locked onto me. The air in the booth seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Linda wiped her mouth with her napkin, leaving a smear of lipstick. Oh, Sarah, you are so efficient, just like Liam was. I ignored the mention of his name. I reached into my purse again and pulled out the checkbook. I opened it and uncapped my pen. $30,000. I said, my voice steady. That is the number we discussed. Yes, Linda said, her eyes tracking the movement of my pen. 30,000. And I just want to be clear, I said, pausing with the pen, hovering over the paper. I looked Linda directly in the eyes. I want to make sure we are all on the same page. This $30,000 pays off the remainder of the loan you took out 7 years ago, right? Linda nodded vigorously. Yes, honey. The loan. The loan for $50,000, I clarified, speaking clearly for the microphone hidden under the napkin. The money you borrowed against your house to pay for Liam's experimental cancer treatment because the insurance company denied it. That is right, Linda said, sighing dramatically. She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand felt hot and clammy. It was such a hard time, Sarah. We didn't want to tell you about the cost back then because you were grieving. But we almost lost the house. We did everything we could to save him. I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat. She was doubling down. She was using his death, his suffering, to validate her theft. So this check, I continued, forcing myself to maintain eye contact. This check for $30,000 concludes that debt. There are no other medical bills, no other loans. This is the final repayment for Liam's medical care. Correct, Gary said, his voice gruff. This squares us up. You have been a good girl, Sarah. You did the right thing honoring his memory like this. Linda dabbed at her eyes. No tears were there, but she went through the motions anyway. Liam is smiling down on us right now, she whispered. He would be so happy to see his family taking care of each other. He would be so proud of you for doing your duty. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Liam wasn't smiling. If Liam was anywhere, he was probably screaming. But I had it. I had the confession. They had confirmed the amount. They had confirmed the existence of the loan. They had confirmed the specific purpose of the funds. And they had confirmed that I had been paying them for 7 years based on this lie. I looked at Marcus and Jessica. They were watching the checkbook like hungry dogs. And you guys, I asked, you are witnesses to this, right? You know that this payment clears the debt for Liam's treatment. Absolutely, Marcus said, taking a swig of wine. We all know how much Mom and Dad sacrificed. It is good you are finally stepping up to finish it off. I looked down at the check. I wrote the date. I wrote Linda's name. I wrote out the words, $30,000. My hand didn't shake. It was steady as a rock. I signed my name at the bottom. I tore the check out of the book. The ripping sound was loud in the quiet booth. I held it out. Linda's hand shot out to grab it. Her fingers closed around the paper, and for a split second she looked like a creature from a horror movie. Her eyes were wide and manic. She pulled the check toward her and inspected it closely, ensuring every detail was correct. Thank you, Sarah, she said, tucking the check into her purse immediately. You have no idea what a relief this is. I know, I said quietly. I can imagine. Marcus raised his glass again. To Sarah he toasted, and to family, and to finally being debt-free. To family, Jessica echoed, clinking her glass against his. I didn't raise my water glass. I just watched them. I slid my hand under the napkin. I felt the phone. I tapped the screen to stop the recording. The file saved automatically. The evidence was secured. They went back to their meal, celebrating their victory. Marcus ordered another bottle of wine. Jessica started talking about how they should all go to Florida next month to look at the condo. They talked right in front of me as if I wasn't there, as if I was just the ATM that had dispensed their cash and could now be ignored. I sat there and watched them eat. I watched Linda laughing with her mouth full. I watched Gary picking his teeth. Eat up, I thought. Enjoy the lobster. Enjoy the wine. Because this is the last meal you will ever eat as free people. I checked my watch. It was 8:30 p.m. The bank was closed. She couldn't cash the check until Monday morning. That gave me the weekend. Linda turned to me smiling, her face flushed with wine. You are quiet tonight, Sarah. Are you thinking about what you are going to do with all your extra money next month, now that you don't have to pay us? I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had birthed my husband and then desecrated his memory for a kitchen renovation. Yes, I said softly. I am thinking about exactly what I'm going to do. She laughed, not understanding the look in my eyes. Well, whatever you do, don't spend it all in one place. I stood up. I couldn't sit there for another second. The smell of the truffle butter and the expensive perfume was making me sick. I'm going to head out, I said. I have an early shift tomorrow. You are not staying for dessert, Marcus asked, disappointed. I was going to order the cheesecake. Put it on my tab, I said. Enjoy it. Really. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. I stepped out into the cold night air and took a huge lungful of oxygen. It tasted clean. It tasted like truth. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and played back the last 10 seconds of the recording. Liam is smiling down on us right now. He would be so proud of you for doing your duty. I saved the file and backed it up to the cloud. Then I emailed a copy to my lawyer, James. I walked to my car, my heels clicking on the pavement. I felt light. I felt dangerous. They had their check. They had their confession. Now the real game could begin. The waiter cleared the dessert plates, leaving only the empty espresso cups and the heavy scent of chocolate and greed hanging in the air. My in-laws were leaning back in the leather booth looking satisfied and sluggish, like pythons that had just swallowed a deer. Marcus was picking his teeth with a toothpick, his tie loosened. Linda was checking her reflection in a compact mirror, applying another layer of lipstick. They looked so comfortable. They looked like they owned the world. Then the waiter returned. He placed the small black leather folder in the center of the table. The bill. It sat there ominous and heavy. Normally this would be the moment where I would reach for it, immediately trained like a dog to pay for its masters. Marcus didn't even look at it. He just kept talking about the view from the Florida condo. Linda patted her purse where my $30,000 check was safely tucked away. They were so confident. They assumed the hierarchy was intact. Sarah pays. They consume. I looked at the folder. I knew exactly what was inside. $1,800. Maybe more with the tax and the tip Marcus had generously suggested I add. I stood up. My legs felt strong. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm of war. I'm just going to run to the ladies' room, I said, flashing a small, apologetic smile. Then we can head out. Take your time, honey, Linda said, waving her hand dismissively. We are just enjoying the atmosphere. I picked up my purse. I made sure to hold it tight against my side. I walked toward the back of the restaurant, past the bar where the businessmen were drinking scotch. I turned the corner toward the restrooms. But I didn't stop. I kept walking. I walked past the mahogany doors of the ladies' room. I walked past the coat check. I walked straight to the heavy glass front doors. The valet saw me coming and scrambled to get the key. I handed him my ticket and a $5 bill. Keep it close, I said. He brought my rusted Toyota around. It looked so out of place among the Bentleys and Mercedes parked out front. I got in. The engine roared to life with its familiar rattle. I put it in gear and pulled out onto Walnut Street. I didn't look back at the restaurant. I didn't look back at the booth where 4 people were waiting for me to pay for their gluttony. I drove for 3 blocks before I pulled over. I needed to send the message. The timing had to be perfect. By now they would be wondering where I was. Maybe Linda was checking her watch. Maybe Marcus was making a joke about women taking too long in the bathroom. I pulled out my phone. I opened the group chat. I typed slowly, savoring every letter. "Oh my God, guys, I am so sorry. I just realized I left my wallet on the kitchen counter at home. I must have been so excited about the check that I forgot it. Mom, can you just put the dinner on your card? It is no big deal since you have the $30,000 check now anyway. Just consider it a tiny deduction from the lump sum. Love you. Send." I merged back into traffic and drove toward the highway. It started 5 minutes later. First, it was a text from Jessica. "Sarah, are you serious? Mom does not have her card on her. Come back." I ignored it. Then a phone call from Gary. I let it go to voicemail. Then the phone started buzzing incessantly. It was vibrating so hard against the passenger seat, it sounded like an angry hornet. Text from Linda. "Sarah, turn around right now. This is not funny. The bill is nearly $2,000. Text from Marcus Yo. "Sarah, pick up. The waiter is staring at us. My cards are maxed out from the business investment. You need to come pay this." I laughed. A loud, genuine laugh that filled the empty car. Of course his cards were maxed out. There was no business investment. He was broke. They were all broke. I could picture the scene perfectly. The waiter standing over the table, his polite smile fading into suspicion. The manager walking over asking if there was a problem. Linda frantically digging through her purse, realizing she had no means to pay. She would try to offer them the check I just wrote. Here she would say, waving the piece of paper, "My daughter-in-law just gave me this. It is for $30,000. And the manager would look at the personal check written on a generic bank slip and shake his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we do not accept personal checks. We need a credit card or cash." The humiliation would be absolute. They were dressed like royalty, but they couldn't pay for their own dinner. They were trapped. My phone rang again. It was Linda. I decided to answer this one just to hear the panic. "Hello?" I said, my voice breezy and innocent. "Sarah, where the hell are you?" Linda screamed. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was a guttural screech. "You get your ass back here right now. They are threatening to call the police. My card was declined, Sarah. Declined." "Do you hear me?" "Oh, no, Mom," I said, feigning shock. "That is so weird. Why would it be declined? Did you spend all the insurance money already?" There was a silence on the other end, a dead cold silence. "What did you say?" she whispered. I said I hung up the phone. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. It immediately started ringing again, but I didn't care. I imagined Marcus sweating in his cheap suit, calling his frat brothers or his shady business partners begging for a Venmo transfer to bail him out. I imagined Jessica crying because the people at the next table were staring at them. I imagined Gary shrinking into his seat, realizing that for the first time in 7 years, he couldn't hide behind his dead son. They would have to stay there for hours until they scraped the money together. Or maybe the police would come. Maybe they would be escorted out in front of the entire restaurant. I turned on the radio. A classic rock song was playing. I turned the volume up. I was driving home to an empty apartment. I had no furniture. I had no heating. I had instant noodles for dinner. But for the first time in 7 years, I felt rich. I was free. And they were the ones who were going to pay. The bill had finally come due. March 1st. For 7 years, this date hung over my head like a guillotine blade. It was the day the rent was due, but more importantly, it was the day the check was due. The day I would usually wake up with a pit in my stomach counting the hours until I had to drive to the post office or hand-deliver $600 of my blood, sweat, and tears to the people who had enslaved me. But this morning was different. The sun was shining through the blinds of my small apartment, and for the first time the light didn't look cold. It looked golden. I made a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table. My checkbook sat there on the surface gathering dust. I ran my finger over the leather cover. I didn't open it. I didn't reach for a pen. I simply took a sip of my coffee and smiled. The deadline passed. 9 a.m. came and went. Then 10 a.m. I imagined Linda checking her mailbox. I imagined her checking her banking app, refreshing the screen over and over again, waiting for the deposit that would never come. I went to work at the hospital with a lightness in my step that terrified me. I felt like a tightly coiled spring waiting to snap, but it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. I knew what was coming. You don't cut off a parasite without the host bleeding a little. I was ready. The morning shift was chaotic as usual. I was running triage in the emergency room, dealing with a flu outbreak and a multi-car pileup on the interstate. The noise was deafening. Beeping monitors, crying children, the PA system calling for doctors. It was the kind of chaos I thrived in because it made sense. Medical trauma has a protocol. You stop the bleeding, you stabilize the patient. Family trauma, unfortunately, does not have a textbook. It was just after lunch when I heard it. At first, it was just a raised voice at the front desk, a shrill, demanding tone that cut through the low hum of the waiting room. I froze while checking a patient's blood pressure. I knew that voice. I had heard that voice criticize my cooking, my clothes, and my grief for 7 years. I stepped out of the patient bay and walked toward the nurse's station. There she was, Linda Brooks. She looked frantic. Her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was slightly askew. She was wearing a heavy fur coat that looked ridiculous in the sterile antiseptic hallway of a hospital. She was leaning over the reception desk, pointing a manicured finger at the young receptionist who looked terrified. "I know she is here," Linda screamed. "Do not lie to me. I know her shift schedule. You tell Sarah to get her ass out here right now." "Ma'am, you cannot be back here," the receptionist stammered. "This is a restricted area. If you are not a patient, you need to wait in the lobby." "I am family," Linda shrieked. Her voice cracked, drawing the attention of every doctor, nurse, and patient in the vicinity. "I am her mother-in-law, and she is hiding from me because she is a thief." My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced my breathing to slow down. In through the nose, out through the mouth, just like I taught my patients. This was it. The tantrum, the extinction burst. I walked out from behind the station. I stood tall, my scrubs crisp and clean, my ID badge hanging around my neck. "I am right here, Linda," I said. My voice was calm, dangerously low. Linda spun around. Her eyes locked onto me, and for a second I saw pure, unadulterated hatred. She marched toward me, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum floor. She looked like she wanted to hit me. "You little witch," she spat. "Where is my money? You didn't send the check." "Marcus tried to use the card this morning, and it was declined because the bank transfer didn't go through. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" I crossed my arms. "I am at work, Linda. You are disrupting a medical facility. I don't care where you are," she yelled, throwing her hands up. She turned to the crowd of people watching us performing for her audience. "Look at her. Look at this saintly nurse. She plays the victim, but she is letting her dead husband's parents starve. My son died 7 years ago, and he left us with a mountain of debt. She promised to pay it. She promised on his grave, and now she is trying to run away with the money." A few patients whispered. A doctor looked at me with concern. Linda saw it, and emboldened, she took a step closer, invading my personal space. "You are ungrateful, Sarah. We took you in. We treated you like a daughter. And this is how you repay us. By cutting us off. By stealing from Liam's legacy. You are going to write me that check right now, plus a late fee, or I am going to make sure everyone in this hospital knows what kind of person you really are." She reached out and grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin through the fabric of my scrubs. That was the mistake. I didn't pull away. I didn't scream. I looked at the security guard who was already jogging toward us. His name was Mike, a big guy who used to be a linebacker. "Mike," I said clearly, "I need assistance." Mike stepped between us, breaking Linda's grip. He loomed over her, his face stern. "Ma'am, you need to step back. You are assaulting a staff member." "Assault." Linda laughed hysterically. "I am her mother. I am disciplining her. She owes me money." I turned to my bag, which was sitting on the counter behind the nurse's station. I had prepared for this. I knew she would come. I reached in and pulled out a thick envelope. I didn't hand it to Linda. I handed it to Mike. "Mike," I said, keeping my eyes on Linda. "This is a temporary restraining order signed by a judge this morning. It states that Linda Brooks is not allowed within 500 feet of my person, my home, or my place of employment." Linda's jaw dropped. "A restraining order," she sputtered. "Are you insane? On what grounds?" "On the grounds of harassment, extortion, and credible threats of financial abuse," I said. "My lawyer submitted the recording of our dinner on Friday night, the one where you admitted the debt was fake, and the voicemail you left me after I left the restaurant where you threatened to come to my job and make me pay. I looked at her and smiled, a cold, hard smile. "It is all in the file, Linda. The judge found the evidence very compelling, especially the part where you admitted to fraud." Linda's face went pale. The red flush of anger drained away, leaving her looking old and gray. "You recorded me," she whispered. "Every word I said." Mike opened the folder and scanned the document. He nodded. "This looks valid, Sarah." He turned to Linda. "Ma'am, you have been served. You are in violation of a court order right now. You need to leave this premises immediately, or I will have to place you under arrest for trespassing and violating a protective order." Linda looked around the room. The audience she had tried to turn against me was now looking at her with disgust. She realized she had walked into a trap. She realized that the meek, submissive daughter-in-law she had bullied for 7 years was gone. "This isn't over," she hissed, backing away. "You think a piece of paper can stop me? We are family." "Not anymore," I said. "Get out." Mike took her by the elbow. "Let's go, ma'am. Do not make a scene." Linda tried to shake him off, but he held firm, guiding her forcefully toward the exit. As she was dragged away, she started screaming again, but this time it wasn't demands. It was desperate pleas. "Sarah, wait. We can talk. We need that money. The condo deposit is due. Sarah, please." The automatic doors slid shut, cutting off her voice. Silence returned to the ER. I stood there, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. I looked at my arm where she had grabbed me. It was throbbing slightly, but the pain felt distant. Dr. Evans walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Sarah, are you okay? Do you need to take a minute?" I looked at him. I looked at the nurses who were staring at me with wide eyes. "No," I said, smoothing my scrub top. "I don't need a minute. I have waited 7 years for this minute." I picked up the patient chart I had been holding. "I am fine, Dr. Evans. Room 3 needs a saline drip." I went back to work, but as I walked down the hall, I checked my phone. One notification from my lawyer. TRO served. Next step, criminal filing. The DA is interested in the insurance fraud angle. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Linda thought the restraining order was the end. She didn't know it was just the opening shot. She had come to my workplace to destroy my reputation. Instead, she had just given me the witnesses I needed to destroy her freedom. March 1st, the best day of my life. The temporary restraining order was a shield, but I knew it would not hold them off forever. Linda was desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. I needed a sword. I needed something sharp enough to cut the head off the snake in one strike. I knew Linda's weakness was money and reputation, but I needed to find Marcus's weakness. The man who wore fake Rolexes and talked about crypto with the frantic energy of a cornered rat had to be hiding something. You do not bleed your in-laws dry just to live a middle-class life unless you are covering a massive hole in the ground. I had saved a little money from my extra shifts, now that I wasn't sending my paycheck to the black hole of the Brooks family. I used it to hire a man named Detective Vance. He was not like the private investigators in the movies. He did not wear a trench coat or smoke cigarettes in the rain. He was a forensic accountant who specialized in digital footprints. I gave him Marcus's full name, his license plate number, and the few details I knew about his so-called business ventures. "Find out where the money goes," I told him. "Linda steals from me to give to him. I want to know what he does with it." It took Vance 3 days. On a rainy Tuesday evening, I met him in a small coffee shop 3 towns over. He slid a thick manila folder across the table. It looked heavy. It looked like a weapon. "You are going to want to sit down for this," Mrs. Brooks Vance said. His face was grim. "I am sitting," I said. "Tell me." He opened the folder and spread out a series of photographs and bank statements. "First, let's talk about the business," Vance said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "There is no business. The investment firm he claims to run is a shell. It is a registered LLC, but it has 0 assets. No clients, no properties. The only money going into that account comes from 2 sources. Your mother-in-law, Linda Brooks, and a series of cash deposits that match the dates of your late husband's insurance withdrawals." I nodded. I knew that part. They were funding him. "But here is where it goes," Vance continued. He pointed to a column of red numbers. DraftKings, FanDuel, underground sports betting sites based in offshore accounts. Sarah, this guy isn't an investor. He is a degenerate gambler. He is in the hole for over $200,000 to some very bad people in Atlantic City. That is why he is so desperate for cash. He isn't buying condos. He is paying off loan sharks to keep his kneecaps intact. I felt a surge of validation. I knew it. I knew he was a fraud. But that is not the headline, Vance said. He pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of a house, not a mansion like the Brooks family home, a small, modest ranch house with a tire swing in the front yard. It was located in Atlanta, Georgia. Who lives there? I asked. Vance pulled out another photo. It showed Marcus, but he wasn't wearing his shiny suits. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He was pushing a swing, and on that swing was a little girl, maybe 5 years old. Next to him stood a woman. She was beautiful, tired-looking, and very real. This is Vanessa, Vance said, and that is his daughter, Maya. My breath caught in my throat. He has a child. He has a family, Vance corrected. And not just a secret family, a legal one. He pulled out a document that made my blood run cold. It was a marriage certificate, dated 8 years ago, Marcus Stone and Vanessa Jenkins, Fulton County, Georgia. I scanned the paper. I looked for a divorce decree. I looked for an annulment. There is no divorce on file, Vance said, answering my unspoken question. I checked every database in the country. He never divorced Vanessa. He just told her he got a high-paying consulting job in Philadelphia that requires him to travel for weeks at a time. He flies back to Atlanta once a month to play daddy and husband. He uses the money he steals from your in-laws to pay the mortgage on that house and keep Vanessa happy so she doesn't ask questions. My mind was reeling. I thought about Jessica, my sister-in-law who walked around with her nose in the air treating me like the help. She thought she was the prize. She thought she had snagged a wealthy, successful entrepreneur. Does Jessica know? I asked. Vance shook his head. No way. He married Jessica 3 years ago right here in Pennsylvania. That makes his marriage to Jessica completely void. It is bigamy, Sarah. It is a felony. In the eyes of the law, Jessica is not his wife. She is just his mistress. And if the state finds out, he goes to prison. I looked at the photos again. Marcus playing the loving father in Atlanta. Marcus playing the rich investor in Philadelphia. He was living 2 lies funded by the death of my husband. Linda thinks she is supporting a dynasty, I whispered. She thinks she is investing in her golden child's future, but she is actually funding the secret life of a bigamist who is legally married to another woman. It was the ultimate irony. Linda cared more about image than anything else in the world. She sacrificed her son's widow to prop up her daughter's perfect marriage. And the marriage wasn't even real. The man she treated like a king was a criminal who was laughing at them behind their backs. This is it, Vance said. You can take this to the police right now. You can have him arrested tonight. I reached out and closed the folder. I ran my hand over the smooth paper. No, I said. Not tonight. Vance looked surprised. Why wait? This guy is a predator. Because if I arrest him now, Linda will just spin it, I said. She will say she was a victim too. She will play the martyr. She will cry and say she didn't know. She will use it to get sympathy. I looked out the window at the rain falling on the pavement. I need them all in the same room, I said. I need Linda to defend him. I need Jessica to cling to him. I need them to stake their entire reputation on him. And then when they are standing on the edge of the cliff holding hands, I am going to push them off. I paid Vance in cash. I took the heavy folder and walked back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and opened the folder one last time. I looked at Jessica's wedding photo, which Vance had included for comparison. She looked so smug, so triumphant. She had won the trophy husband. And then I looked at the marriage certificate from Atlanta. I had the nuclear codes in my lap. I drove home feeling a strange sense of calm. The fear was completely gone now. The anger had crystallized into something sharp and precise. Linda was coming after me with lawyers. She was going to try to drag me into court to fight for the money she thought she was owed. She was going to demand a mediation hearing to settle the family dispute. Good. Let her. I wanted a court reporter. I wanted a judge. I wanted it all on the official record. I imagined the look on Jessica's face when she found out she wasn't a wife, she was a side piece. I imagined the look on Linda's face when she realized her investments were actually donations to a bookie in Atlantic City. I put the folder in my fireproof safe box, hidden under the floorboards of my closet. Sleep tight, Marcus, I whispered to the empty room. Enjoy your double life for a few more days, because when I am done with you, you won't even have a name left to hide behind. The trap was set, the bait was taken, and now I had the hammer. I went to sleep that night, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't dream of Liam dying. I dreamed of justice, and it was beautiful. The paperwork sat on the desk in front of me. It was a stack of documents 3 inches thick, bound with a heavy metal clip. To anyone else, it might have looked like just a pile of paper. A dry, boring collection of legal jargon and numbers. But to me, it looked like a weapon. It was a loaded gun, and I was about to pull the trigger. My lawyer, James, sat across from me, tapping his pen against a yellow legal pad. He looked serious. He looked like a man who was about to go to war. "Are you sure about this, Sarah?" he asked. "Once we file this, there is no going back. This is not a civil dispute anymore. We are alleging criminal conduct, insurance fraud, theft by deception, forgery. If the district attorney picks this up, Linda and Gary could be looking at real prison time, not just fines, years behind bars." I looked at the documents. I saw the words printed in bold black ink: Plaintiff Sarah Brooks versus Defendants Linda Brooks and Gary Brooks. I thought about the last 7 years. I thought about the cold nights in my apartment. I thought about the instant noodles. I thought about Linda screaming at me in the hospital hallway. I thought about Marcus laughing about his secret wife while spending my money. I picked up the pen. I am sure I said. My voice did not waver. They stole $500,000 from a dead man. They stole $50,000 from his widow. They didn't show me any mercy, James. Why should I show them any? I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent. "Let's serve them," I said. The process server was a man named Tony. He was a retired cop with a face like a slab of granite. I paid him extra to serve them at home early in the morning. I wanted to catch them before they had their coffee, before they could put on their masks of respectability. I wasn't there to see it, but Tony told me exactly what happened. It was 8 a.m. on a Wednesday. Linda answered the door in her silk robe, holding a ceramic mug. She probably thought it was a delivery, maybe another package for Jessica, maybe a gift she had bought herself with my money. When Tony handed her the thick envelope, she smiled. She actually smiled. She thought she had won. She probably thought it was an apology letter from me, or maybe the check she had demanded at the hospital. "You have been served," Ma'am Tony said. Linda looked confused. "Served? What do you mean, served?" "It is a lawsuit," Tony explained. "You are being sued for fraud and theft. Have a nice day." Tony said she stood there on the porch, frozen like a statue, as he walked back to his car. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She was too shocked. Because in Linda's mind, I was Sarah the mouse. I was Sarah the doormat. I was the girl who apologized for existing. The idea that I would hire a lawyer, that I would drag them into the light of a courtroom, was impossible to her. It broke her reality. But the shock didn't last long. Panic set in quickly. 10 minutes later, my phone started ringing. It was Gary, then Linda, then Jessica. I had blocked their numbers, but my phone showed the missed call notifications piling up like debris from a shipwreck. I didn't answer. I sat in my living room drinking tea and watching the notifications roll in. I knew exactly what they would do next. I knew their playbook better than they knew it themselves. When a narcissist gets caught, they don't apologize. They don't try to make amends. They try to hide the evidence, and they try to hide the money. Linda and Gary were not smart criminals. They were arrogant ones. They believed they were untouchable. They believed the house, the cars, the boat fund belonged to them by divine right. And they believed that if they just moved the money around, they could outsmart me. At 10:30 a.m., James called me. "You were right," he said. His voice was grim but impressed. "They are moving fast." "Tell me," I said. "We just got a flag from the county clerk's office," James said. "A request was just submitted electronically to transfer the deed of the family home. They are trying to quitclaim the house to Jessica." I laughed. Of course they were. They were trying to put the house in Jessica's name to protect it from the lawsuit. If the house belonged to Jessica, technically, I couldn't touch it to satisfy a judgment against Linda and Gary. They thought they were being clever. They thought they were circling the wagons around the golden child. They had no idea that the golden child was married to a bigamist who was about to drag them all down. But more importantly, they had no idea that I was 5 steps ahead of them. "Did the transfer go through?" I asked. James chuckled. "Not a chance. The clerk rejected it immediately." "Because of the lis pendens," I said, savoring the legal term. "Exactly," James said. "The moment we filed the lawsuit this morning, we also filed an emergency motion for a preliminary injunction to freeze all assets. We placed a lien on the property and froze their bank accounts pending the outcome of the litigation. The judge signed the order an hour ago." I leaned back in my chair. This meant they were locked out. Linda and Gary had probably rushed to their computer or called their family lawyer in a panic, telling him to move the house to Jessica. They probably thought they had beaten the clock. But when they hit send, the system had flagged them. Transaction denied, asset frozen by court order. I could imagine the scene in that kitchen, the screaming, the blaming, Gary yelling at Linda for spending too much, Linda yelling at Gary for not protecting them, Jessica whining that she didn't want to be involved while secretly terrified that her free ride was over. They were trapped in that big, beautiful house, and they couldn't sell a single brick of it. But the freeze went deeper than just the house. James continued giving me the update. "The freeze order covers the bank accounts too, Sarah. The joint account with Liam, their personal checking, their savings. Even Marcus's so-called business account because we listed him as a co-conspirator in the theft. Every card they had was now a piece of plastic. Every check they wrote would bounce. They were effectively bankrupt until a judge said otherwise." I looked at the clock. It was almost lunchtime. "They are going to try to run," I said. James hesitated. "You think so?" "I know them," I said. "They are cowards. If they can't hide the money, they will try to hide themselves. They will try to go to that condo in Florida. They will try to claim residency in another state to slow down the proceedings." "Let them try," James said. "We have their passports flagged, and if they miss the deposition next week, the judge will issue a bench warrant for their arrest." I hung up the phone and walked to the window. The lawsuit was public record now. In a small, wealthy suburb like ours, news traveled fast. By tomorrow, the neighbors would know. Mrs. Gable would know. The church group would know. The country club would know. Linda's reputation, the thing she valued more than her own son's life, was about to be shredded. Insurance fraud, theft by deception. These were ugly, dirty words. They were words that stained. I thought about the $50,000 I had paid them. I thought about the $500,000 they had stolen. They had tried to transfer the house to Jessica. That was the final insult. Even with the walls closing in, even with the police knocking at the door, they still tried to protect Jessica. They still tried to give her the asset while leaving me with the debt. They never loved me. I knew that. But they never even respected me. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out that the scariest person in the world is a quiet woman who has lost everything and has nothing left to lose. I checked my email. A notification from the bank, legal fee processed, balance remaining healthy. I wasn't rich. Not yet. But I had my dignity. And I had the law. I grabbed my coat. I was going to drive by their house. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to trespass. I just wanted to see it. I wanted to see the Range Rover sitting in the driveway knowing they couldn't afford the gas to drive it. I wanted to see the curtains drawn tight against the world. I wanted to see the prison they had built for themselves. The lawsuit was just the beginning. The real punishment was knowing that they were trapped in a cage of their own making with no money, no friends, and a daughter-in-law who held the keys. And I wasn't unlocking the door. The conference room at the law firm was lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. But the atmosphere inside was suffocating. On one side of the long mahogany table sat Linda and Gary, flanked by their expensive defense attorney, who looked bored. On the other side sat James and me. And at the far end of the table, looking like they were attending a social gala rather than a legal mediation, sat Jessica and Marcus. Linda was the first to speak. She smoothed her skirt and looked at me with eyes full of fake pity. "Sarah, this has gone too far. Dragging us into a legal battle over family money. Liam would be ashamed of you." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her. James cleared his throat. We are here to discuss the misappropriation of funds from the estate of Liam Brooks and the fraudulent collection of monies from my client over a 7-year period. We are seeking full restitution." Linda's lawyer sighed. "Look, let's be reasonable. The $500,000 from the insurance policy was in a joint account. Legally, it passed to Mrs. Brooks upon death. And the monthly payments from Sarah, those were gifts, voluntary contributions to the family. You can't sue for the return of a gift." Linda nodded smugly. "Exactly. Liam loved his mother. He wanted me to have that money. He told me so before he died. He said, 'Mom, take care of yourself.'" I leaned forward. I placed a single piece of paper on the table. "He told you that I asked quietly. He told you to take the money." "Yes," Linda said, lifting her chin. "He was very clear." I slid the paper toward her. It was a copy of Liam's medical chart from the intensive care unit. "That is interesting, Linda," I said, "because according to this medical report, Liam slipped into a hepatic coma on February 14th. He was completely unresponsive. He had zero brain activity. He couldn't speak. He couldn't open his eyes. And he certainly couldn't tell you to take care of yourself." Linda's face twitched. "Well, maybe it was before the coma." I slid another paper across the table. "This is the withdrawal slip from the bank," I said. "It is dated February 16th, the day after he died. But look at the signature authorizing the transfer of funds. It is Liam's signature, or at least a very bad attempt at it." The room went deadly silent. I continued, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. "You see, Linda, for a joint account to be liquidated like that, usually you just need the survivor's signature. But because of the specific type of trust account, this was the bank required dual authorization for a transfer of that magnitude unless a death certificate was presented. You didn't wait for the death certificate, did you? You were too greedy. You wanted the cash immediately. So you forged his signature. You signed a dead man's name to steal $500,000. Linda's lawyer sat up straighter, grabbing the paper. He looked at it. He looked at Linda. His face went pale. Linda started to stammer. I had power of attorney." "Power of attorney ends at death," James said sharply. "Signing that check was forgery. It was wire fraud. And because the amount exceeds $100,000, it is a first-degree felony." I looked at Gary. He was staring at his hands, refusing to make eye contact. "Here is the deal," I said. I laid out the terms. "You are going to return the $500,000, every cent. You are also going to return the $50,400 I sent you over the last 7 years, plus interest." Linda slammed her hand on the table. "I don't have it. We spent it. It is gone." "Then you will sell the house," I said calmly. "You will sell the cars. You will liquidate your jewelry. I don't care how you get it, but you will pay me back." "And if I don't," Linda sneered, "you think you can put your own mother-in-law in jail?" I smiled, and it was the smile of the wolf finally closing its jaws. "Linda, I have already sent this evidence to the district attorney. They are just waiting for me to give the green light to press charges. If you don't sign the settlement agreement today, if you don't agree to pay me back, you won't be going home to your mansion. You will be going to a holding cell." Linda looked at her lawyer for help. He closed his folder. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, his voice devoid of sympathy, "if this evidence is real, you are looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. I strongly suggest you take the deal." Linda slumped in her chair. The fight went out of her. She looked small, old, defeated. But then from the end of the table, a voice rang out. "This is ridiculous!" It was Jessica. She stood up, her face red with indignation. Her silver bracelets jangled as she pointed a finger at me. "You are a monster, Sarah. You are trying to ruin our parents because you are jealous. You are jealous that I have a happy life and you are a lonely widow. We don't need your money." She turned to Marcus, who was sweating profusely in his seat. "Tell her, Marcus. Tell her we will hire the best lawyers in the country. Tell her we are rich. My husband is a crypto mogul. Sarah, he makes more in a week than you make in a year. We will pay Mom's legal fees. We will destroy you in court." I looked at Jessica. The golden child. The girl who had never heard the word no. The girl who thought the world existed to serve her. I picked up the thick black folder that Detective Vance had given me. It landed on the table with a heavy thud. "Rich," I asked, "is that what he told you?" I opened the folder. "I think you should look at this, Jessica." I fanned the photos out on the table like a deck of cards. The first photo showed Marcus in Atlanta pushing the swing. The second photo showed the marriage certificate, Marcus Stone and Vanessa Jenkins. The third photo showed his gambling debts, $200,000 in the red. "What is this?" Jessica whispered. She looked at the photo of Marcus and the little girl. "Who is that?" "That is his daughter," I said. "Her name is Maya. And the woman next to him, that is his wife, his real wife, Vanessa." Jessica looked at Marcus. Her eyes were wide with confusion and horror. "Marcus? What is she talking about?" Marcus stood up. He looked like he was about to vomit. "Babe, listen, it is complicated. She is crazy. These are fake. AI generated." I pointed to the marriage certificate. "That is a certified copy from Fulton County, Georgia, Marcus. You are a bigamist. You are married to 2 women at the same time. And you know what else? You are broke. You have been using Linda's stolen money to pay off your gambling debts and support your other family." Jessica let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a high-pitched, keening wail. She grabbed the photo of the little girl. "You have a kid. You told me you didn't want kids yet. You have a wife." Marcus backed away toward the door. "I can explain. I just need to make a call." He didn't wait. He turned and ran. He actually ran out of the conference room, leaving his wife and his in-laws to face the music alone. Jessica collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. "My life, my house, it is all a lie." Linda stared at the door where her favorite son-in-law had just vanished. The golden child's perfect life had shattered in 5 seconds. I stood up. "The deal stands," I said to Linda. "Sell the house, pay me back, or go to prison. You have 24 hours to sign." I walked out of the room, leaving them in the ruins of their arrogance. Jessica was screaming. Linda was weeping. Gary was staring at the wall. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. 6 months later. The moving truck was small. It had to be. Linda and Gary didn't have much left to move. They had sold the house. It went for under market value because they needed the cash fast, but it was enough. They wired me every cent I was owed. $550,000 plus interest. They were moving into a 1-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. The kind of neighborhood where they used to lock their car doors when driving through. They were living on Social Security now. No more cruises. No more steak dinners. No more country club memberships. I sat in my new car parked across the street and watched them. Linda came out carrying a box. She looked frail. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was gray. She saw me. She stopped. For a moment, we just looked at each other. She didn't scream. She didn't glare. She just looked down in shame and hurried into the truck. Jessica didn't fare much better. After Marcus disappeared, taking her jewelry and her savings with him, she had a nervous breakdown. She lost her job. She lost her condo. She had to move in with Linda and Gary, sleeping on their pull-out couch. I heard from a friend that Jessica was working as a cashier at the local grocery store, the same store where she used to yell at employees for bagging her organic produce wrong. Now she was the one wearing the apron scanning items for people she used to look down on. The cycle of narcissism was broken, not by love, but by force. I put the car in gear and drove away. I drove out of the city toward the quiet green hills of the cemetery. It was a beautiful day. The sun was warm, and the birds were singing. I walked up the path to Liam's grave. I had paid for a new headstone. It was polished black granite, simple and strong. I knelt down and placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grass. "Hey, you," I whispered. I touched the cold stone. "It is done, Liam. They can't hurt us anymore." I took it back. I took back your legacy. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The balance shown on the screen, $580,000. I tapped on the transfer button. I had set up a recurring donation, $600 a month, but not to Linda. Payee, the Liam Brooks Cancer Research Fund. I hit confirm. Transfer successful. I stood up and brushed the grass from my knees. I looked at the sky. I felt lighter than air. I had spent 7 years in a prison of guilt, paying a debt that didn't exist. I had lost my youth. I had lost my joy. But I had found something else in the fire. I had found my spine. I walked back to my car, my own car, bought with my own money. I turned the key and the engine purred. No rattles, no noise, just smooth, quiet power. I drove out of the cemetery gates and onto the open road. The debt was paid, the books were balanced, and for the first time in my life, the road ahead belonged entirely to me. I smiled. My husband died 7 years ago. Every month, I sent his mom $600. Until I found out the truth. It cost me 7 years of my life to learn that family isn't blood, it is who treats you with respect. But standing here today, free and whole, I can finally say, it was worth every penny.